Welcome to another payment integration video, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to integrate Cybersource Gateway Microform integration method. Okay, so let's jump straight to it. So this is the first time we do Cybersource integrations on this channel, and they have multiple integration methods. I picked Microform for this video. This is a fully customizable payment method that lets you host the payment page on your site, and you're still going to be fully PCI compliant. So let's go ahead and try this pre-built demo here to show you what it looks like. You'll just enter your card information, expiry, and you hit pay. Just like that, the payment gets placed. Okay, so what is happening there really behind the scenes? I got a diagram for you as always to explain that. So what's happening is that when the payment page first loads, the client side sends a request to the server to generate what they call the capture context. The capture context is this very long string that contains the JavaScript library for this payment form here. So the gateway returns that to your server returns that to the client side. The client side uses that to load your JavaScript library. That will then load the payment page iframes that will sit on top of these custom payment fields to collect the card information. And then when I enter my card information here, they don't actually go into my client side. It's not handled by my code. There's an invisible iframe sitting on top of my payment fields that push the card information directly to the gateway when you hit pay. That's why we're fully PCI compliant here. So it sends that to Cybersource. Cybersource tokenizes the card information and then returns to your client side the payment information, but tokenized in a long string. Then you take that, send it to your server. Your server will perform a Cybersource payment API request. Then that's when the authorization takes place, and you will get approved at the client for the payment. Then Cybersource will return that response to your server returns that to the client and displays the payment result like what you saw earlier here. So this is how it works. This is the integration guide that we'll be following. There's a client-side setup, server-side setup, and it's pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and implement this. Okay, so step one, we have to implement this API call over here using these parameters that will return this super long string that's going to give us the JavaScript library URL for our client side. And I have a sample here already of this implemented. I hit send, and it will send the request and returns the token. They call this the JWT token. Okay, now you should be wondering, where did I get this Postman samples from? How do I have my test API keys? And you can simply get that from this website here, from the documentation. Go to Cybersource developer website, and here on the top, if you hover under Hello World, there's this page that will take you to the Postman collection for Cybersource. This will contain all their samples, a lot of samples, and it will give you also the test credentials that you could use to test the API, select the merchant ID. Anyways, back to it. We need to implement this API request over here. I need to build a placeholder in my empty payment page. This is my pre-built project. Let's go and change to the brand new project. Okay, brand new. I need to build a placeholder component here on my checkout page that will perform that first step. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, cool. Now inside this component, I'm gonna build something that will call the API as soon as the component mounts. I'm gonna use useEffect for that. Okay, I have my placeholder in place. Now I'm gonna go ahead and create a project folder to build my API call in it. This is the endpoint project where I'm going to be building my API request. I use Firebase for hosting my endpoints. You could be using something else. This is just my preference. So I'm going to go ahead and implement my Cybersource API call here and call it then from my client side. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so now I have all the components that I need to send the API request. I got my API keys, but I haven't created my headers yet. Now, to create the headers that will authenticate your payment request before it goes to Cybersource, you need to follow this guide to know how to authenticate your API request to Cybersource. I won't cover this in this video because it deserves its own video, to be honest. It's a bit long, but I'm not going to leave you guys hanging. I created an NPM package that will take in your inputs for you and then create the headers for your request. So you're just filling your key, your request path, your merchant ID, and so on, and then it spits out an object that you can just plug in your API request as your headers. So this is what I'm going to use in this video to generate the headers and save time explaining it. Okay, now we have everything in place. Now let's see if this thing actually works or will it fail, like it always does when I prepare a video. Let's try it. There you go, it actually works. Now, this JWT token here is going to contain the JavaScript library link. If you decode it using a online JWT decoder, you're going to see what it gives you when it's decoded. So this is the client library that we're going to be using in our client side to render the form, which leads me to the next step. Now let's go ahead and follow the next step, which is to load this client side library, decode this on the client side, and get the client side library. Now notice I'm skipping a step here called validating the server side capture context. Basically, this tells you how to make sure that this token is a real one and not a fake one, and it actually came from Cybersource. Now this is a good idea if you're bouncing your token around between different systems, some of them that you know, some of them that you don't, for example from your server to some third party to your client side or so on. So if you're doing that, or if you're storing the token or reusing it, this is a good idea to follow. I'm not going to cover this in this video, but again, the library that I showed you guys earlier does have a method that does this, simplifies that for you here. It's called validate JWT. You plug in your JWT token in your host and it's going to validate if the token is real for you. So you could use that if you're interested and if you need it. But in my opinion, you don't really need this if you're getting the token from Cybersource and then sending it and using it to your client side right away with no storing or any third parties in between, and you're using HTTPS communication between your server and your client side. So if you got that, if you're doing it like how I'm doing it, you most likely don't really need this. But again, this is my opinion and everyone is different, so keep that in mind. Now let's jump into the next step, which is the client side setup. I need to dynamically create this JavaScript code that I basically need to decode the JWT token and then dynamically insert a script HTML tag like this into my React.js project. Let me show you how to do that, but first let me go ahead and implement the API call that I just created in my client side here. So first thing, I'm going to be getting the capture context. Okay, so this is how I get this token. Let's go ahead and test if it works. See if I'm getting the token by printing it out in my console. So when I load the page, I should get the token in the console. So there you go, I am getting it. Now for decoding the JWT token, you live in a great time where you don't really have to search for for things like that. You know, you could just ask an AI, you could ask ChatGPT, you could ask Bard from Google, you could ask your preferred AI to just create that code for you. So you can just say, create a method for me that decodes a JWT token in JS. Let me copy that, insert it in my code here, and let's try it now and see how it works. There it is, it's decoded, and now I know where to get my client-side library from. I gotta get it from this array here, CTX. I just gotta get the first element, and that's gonna have the stuff that I need. Now I need to get client library and client integ. Let's just call it client library, which is gonna have two parameters. Client library, that's the URL, and let's log these two. Okay, this is what I need. Now, since I got these two, this is what I'll need to dynamically load the JavaScript library. Actually, let's move this here so we can access them. Null. And null. And remove these. Now we can access them outside this try catch function. Okay, now next step will be to load the JS library. Here on the guide, there's a code sample that you could use. Copy that in here. There are methods here to load the payment fields. We're not ready to do that yet. Let me just comment those out for now. Okay, and here we need to fix some stuff. This is library URL, and this should be integrity. Okay. Oh, and here it says microform is not defined, so I should define it somewhere. I'll define it on the function level here. This is probably not how you should do it. You should probably use ref when you're doing this. Integrity. Okay. That's that. Okay, so this is how you dynamically load the JavaScript library. Now the next step for me would be to build the payment form fields and then uncomment these so that the JavaScript library renders the invisible iframe over my payment form fields so that it can collect the payment and push it directly to Cybersource. So here in the payment form, we're just going to paste this code. I don't want to bore you and just type in front of you this whole time. It's going to be very slow. It's going to take very long. So I decided to just pre-build the payment form and then explain what's going on. Let me zoom in for you so you could see. So inside my payment form, I basically have my payment form and my payment button here. So I have a loading state variable. When this state variable is set to false, my payment button will appear. And when I click on my payment button, here I'm going to have a method that asks the library to push the payment information to Cybersource and get the token back. So this what shows up, the pay button, when it's not loading, like this. But when I hit this payment button, I'm gonna change the state variable to true while the API request is being sent. And when it's loading, instead I'll get this indicator. And this is just this material UI circular indicator component here. So this is what's going on with the button. Now let's jump to the payment form. This is completely customized by you, by the way. It has nothing to do with the JavaScript library for Cybersource. Now this is the payment form. This is where the real action happens. In this payment form, I use the JavaScript library to really collect the sensitive PCI data only. So I use it to mount over this card number container. That's why you see this and this doesn't have a text, but this and this, yeah, because I collect this on my client side. That's fine. But this and this gets collected by the JavaScript library. So this is the number container. This is the style that I chose. And I decided, in my case, I decided to put my payment fields next to each other here, like number, month, year, and then CVV. But you don't have to do that. You can put them on top of each other if you want, or any other way. Just make sure when you do, you ID them correctly. Like for example, this is number container and this is the ID, and this will be used by my JavaScript. This will be used by my JavaScript library so that it knows where to put the payment field. So let's just comment this so you can see what that looks like. So this will help my JavaScript library. It will help the Cybersource library find where this number input field is, and then put the iframe on it like this. Save. Now check this out. There you go. It found it. It loaded. Cool. But it doesn't do that with my expiry. This goes in my client side, which is fine. It's not a sensitive information as long as you transmit it to your server, then Cybersource using HTTPS. And this is the CVV. Same story. So what I want you to notice here is that I'm organizing these fields however I want. In my case, I organize them in a row, and I customize the size of each field. In my case, I want the card number to take half the size of the page, and then the rest will be taken by the other fields. So it's fully custom, and that's the nice thing about this solution. You just completely build it however you want it. There's another thing. Notice how when I enter the card information here, the card number here, it's in blue. I set this in the JavaScript library here. In here, when you load the JavaScript library, you're gonna pass a styles parameter that looks like this, and you're gonna pass it here. When you initialize your Microform JavaScript instance, you're gonna put it here. Okay, so you set up the Microform first, you put your token here in the Flex library, and that's gonna give you a Flex instance. And Flex instance will give you the Microform. When you initialize the Microform, you're gonna put your styles there so that the Microform knows which styles to use. Then you're gonna load the number field like this. This is your placeholder for the number field. I can make it something else, like for example, just card number. And this is the CVV, or as some other people call it, CSC. So save, and it will change accordingly like this. And that's it, really. Now, if I enter my card information here, it will generate a token. Now, I gotta show you how to create that token when the user hits pay. So let's go back to the guide here. This is the samples that I followed to build the form. Under creating the pay button with the event listener, here's a full code sample. In my case, because I'm using React.js, I just need this over here. So I'm gonna copy this, go back here. I'm gonna go under Microform, and I'm gonna create a method called pay button click. This is going to be async because I'm going to put my API call here, and I'm going to paste this code right here, but I got to clean it up. Something is wrong. Yeah, it's missing this. It's missing a curly braces, so I added that here. Okay, so when the user click the pay button, I'm going to print out the token that I got. I'm not using this in my code. Okay, this is how we're going to get the token that we're going to be using for the payment later at the last step. Now let's go back to our pay button. Here, I'm going to add that method that I just implemented. Pay button clicked. Okay, and don't forget to set the loading to true. Set loading true when that happens. Then when it gets an error, you should set it back to false. And same when you get the token, but I'm gonna remove this later, you'll see. Now I gotta make sure the expiry month square selectors are right. In this case it says X month, but I don't think that's the case in my code. So let's go back to the payment form here, and I actually call it expiry month container. So I'll just fix that here, and same thing here, expiry year, and I'll print it out just to make sure my input is correct. Now let's test this, see if it works. Hit pay. There you go. It's working. That's great. I'm getting my expiry date. I'm getting my token, which will contain the expiry dates. So this is how we get the token and how we implement the client-side library. I kind of went through it quickly. So guys, if I missed something or I didn't explain something well enough, please leave some questions in the comment section below. I'm gonna address. On to the next step and the last step, which is to send the payment API request. This step is gonna be here all the way at the end of this guide. So this is, where is it? I'm trying to find it. There you go. Here's what a sample API request look like when you pay using the transient token that you got using your Microform JavaScript library. I actually have it implemented also here in my Postman. So for this, you will need amount, currency, the token that you obtained from your client side. And if you want to capture the amount right away as opposed to doing an authorized then capture, you need to set capture to true. Okay, so keep that in mind, and you need to generate a random identifier for your payment. This could be your order ID, for example. So let's test it using the token that we just got from our client side. Let's just copy this over here and just put it here. Then send the payment. See what we get. Here it's gonna say payment has been authorized. Pretty straightforward, right? So let's go ahead and implement this in our server side. I'm gonna also set up an endpoint project folder for this. This is where I'm gonna be implementing my payment endpoint right here. And here's what I like about Cybersource endpoints is that once you implemented one, it's so easy to just implement another one, even if it does something completely different. So all you gotta do is just copy it like I just did right now. Change the name, then go back to Postman, copy this, put it here, and just replace the path like this, and there you're all set. Now, unlike the other API request, now this one I need to actually get some inputs from the client side. So, for example, I need to generate a reference ID. Well, actually, I'll do this on the server side. This will go here. I need to get the token that we generated from the client side here. So this will I'll also get it from the client. Let me just delete this, it's pretty long. This will be token. This will be request body JWT. And I also need amount. Now, unlike other APIs, I can just input the amount as it is. So if it's 92.55, I can just put the total amount in the API request as it is, as a string, as opposed to most payment providers over there that require you to convert the amount into cents. So you don't have to do that here. You can just take it as it is. Currency is currency. Now I'm gonna go ahead and test this. Use it by generating another token on my client side and then plugging it in Postman. Okay, it's my, oh, I forgot to create a code that generates the reference. So let's do that real quick. The same way we did the decode JWT, just ask ChatGPT for a code that does that. Create a method that generates a length. Just take that, copy it, oopsie, put it here, and this will be your alphanumerical string 10. There we go. Now let's try this. Here's Postman. I just need the JWT token that I got from my client-side library. I'll copy this and I'll put it here. Okay, please work. It works. Now I can deploy this to production and use it in my client side. Our endpoint got deployed to production, and let's go ahead and use it in our client side. All we gotta do is over here, when the pay button is clicked, I'm gonna take this token that was generated and send it to my server, which is gonna perform the payment using Cybersource Payment API. So let's do this here. It's gonna be very simple. Okay, once the payment is done, I gotta redirect to my result page, which is, because I'm testing on my local host, it's gonna be this localhost /result. And what I want to do is that I want to append my reference number. What is the exact reference that I'm using here? Reference as a parameter, which I'm gonna get from, let's see which field do we get it from. I'm getting my reference ID in here, client reference information. So it has to be Cybersource response, client reference information, dot code. Okay, and I'm going to print out the response here. Cool. Now I don't need this anymore because I'm going to be redirecting, so I don't have to set the loading back to false. Save. Okay, let's test this and hope for the best now. Okay, refresh, enter your card information, CVV, you hit pay, it's loading, it sends the token, payment is done and complete, and there you go, it's working. And that's how to implement Cybersource Gateway Microform integration method. This is a great integration method if you want full flexibility full customization. And I know for the small merchant this is not needed. This is more like if you're a big merchant with a capable developer team, or you have a website that you control and you want to impress with the payment experience and you want to have a complete control over it. This is the payment integration method for you, and this is how to implement it. Now, if you like this video, hit like, subscribe. I might have missed some details here and there, so if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you found this video useful and you want to support the channel and get access to the full source code that we used in this video, you can check my Patreon link in the description below. You'll be able to get the source code for this video and help the channel. But otherwise, you could follow this guide and the official guide together, and you could totally build this on your own. Yeah, and that's it. That's all for today, and see you next time.